In Riverton, corruption wore a badge. For years, Sergeant Wade Kane and his crew acted with impunity. Every stop an excuse, every night a show of force. But when cops choked out a black woman for resisting, they thought it was just another routine display of dominance. To them, she looked ordinary, powerless, and easy to silence. They couldn't have been more wrong. The woman they left, gasping on the pavement, was Alanna Pierce, the director of the FBI. And their brutality would ignite not fear, but a firestorm that threatened to bring their entire empire crashing down. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The night air hung heavy over Riverton's east side. Alanna Pierce adjusted her gray sweatshirt as she walked away from her mother Ruth's house, grocery bags now empty and folded in her pocket. The streetlights cast long shadows across the cracked pavement, their dim glow barely touching the edges of the old brownstones. A police cruiser's lights suddenly flared to life at the corner ahead, splashing red and blue across brick walls and parked cars. Alanna slowed her pace, watching as 3 officers surrounded a young black man she recognized, Keon Brooks, a quiet kid who helped out at her mother's church. "I said, you fit the description." Sergeant Wade Kane's voice cut through the night. His broad shoulders blocked the streetlight, casting his face in shadow. "Arms where I can see them." "Please, sir. I just left my grandmother's house." Keon's voice trembled. "I didn't do anything wrong. I'm a student at the community college." Alanna's jaw tightened. She knew this scene too well, had seen it play out countless times before. 2 patrol officers flanked Kane, their hands resting on their belts. "Ma'am, stay back," one officer called out as Alanna approached. "This doesn't concern you." "I'm just a concerned citizen," Alanna said evenly, keeping her voice calm and measured. The young man appears cooperative. "There's no need for 3 officers." Kane turned, his face twisting into a sneer. "Back up now, or you'll be joining him." "I'm asking you to de-escalate," Alanna continued, her hands visible at her sides. "He's clearly not a threat." "Last warning," Kane growled. Everything exploded in an instant. One officer lunged for Keon, grabbing his arm. The teen flinched, and Kane shouted, "Stop resisting!" Alanna moved without hesitation. Years of FBI training took over as she deflected the second officer's grab, using his momentum to sweep him off balance. Her elbow caught Kane's partner in the solar plexus as he charged, doubling him over. "Stop! You're making this worse!" Kane bellowed, unclipping his baton. The street erupted into chaos. Alanna blocked a wild swing from the first officer, trapped his arm, and used a joint lock to force him down. Her movements were precise, defensive, meant to control, not harm. But they kept coming. The second officer recovered, throwing a punch that grazed her shoulder. Alanna pivoted, using his weight against him, sending him stumbling into a parked car. Red and blue lights strobed across the scene, turning the violence into a brutal dance of shadows. "Get her! Resisting arrest!" Kane's voice boomed as neighbors began emerging onto their porches. Someone held up a phone, recording. Alanna managed to keep 3 trained officers at bay for several long moments, her defensive tactics creating space for Keon to scramble back. But Kane changed the equation. He bull-rushed her from behind while she deflected another officer's grab. The impact drove her forward. Alanna rolled with it, trying to break free, but Kane's weight bore her down. The concrete scraped her cheek as thick arms wrapped around her throat. "Stop resisting!" The words became a chant as the other officers piled on, knees driving into her back, hands roughly pulling her arms. "You're killing her!" Keon's terrified voice cut through the chaos. More phones appeared in windows and doorways, their lights like stars in the darkness. Alanna fought to tuck her chin to protect her airway, but Kane's grip was like iron. Her lungs burned. The edges of her vision began to darken as Kane's snarl filled her ear. Should have listened. Resisting arrest. The red and blue lights began to blur, strobing slower and slower as consciousness slipped away. The last thing she heard was the wail of approaching sirens, growing distant. The world swam back into focus slowly, fragments of sensation piercing through the darkness. Cold asphalt pressed against Alana's cheek, rough and sticky with oil. Her wrists burned from the tight metal handcuffs digging into her skin. A heavy knee ground into her back, making each shallow breath a struggle. Red and blue lights still pulsed across the scene, but now more sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Her head throbbed where it had hit the ground. The taste of copper filled her mouth. "You're choking a woman!" a voice shouted from somewhere above. "What's wrong with you?" "Get back! Everyone back!" one of the officers yelled at the gathering crowd. The knee on Alana's back pressed harder, sending fresh pain shooting through her ribs. "She wasn't resisting," another neighbor called out. "We all saw it. We got it on video!" Through blurry vision, Alana could make out phones held high, their lights like accusatory eyes in the darkness. More cruisers pulled up, their doors slamming as backup arrived. To her left, she heard Keon grunt in pain. Her eyes focused just enough to see them roughly shoving him against a patrol car, his hands cuffed behind his back. His young face was pressed against the cold metal, fear evident in his wide eyes. "Stay still, boy," one officer growled. Alana tried to lift her head, gathering what little strength remained. Her throat felt like it was on fire, each breath raspy and painful. "Get off!" She managed to gasp before darkness crept back in at the edges of her vision. The pressure on her back suddenly increased. "Shut up!" a voice hissed above her. More shouting filled the air as neighbors pressed closer, held back by the newly arrived officers. The crowd's anger was palpable, their voices rising in unified outrage. "Y'all gonna kill her right here in the street. She was trying to help that boy." "This ain't right!" Sirens cut through the chaos, different ones this time. An ambulance pulled up, its white and red lights adding to the surreal light show. Heavy boots approached quickly. "Move! Emergency medical services!" a firm voice commanded. "Get off her now!" The knee finally lifted from Alana's back. She gulped in air, her chest heaving against the pavement. Two EMTs knelt beside her, their practiced hands quickly checking her vital signs. The first one, younger with close-cropped hair, leaned in close to examine the darkening bruises around her neck. His eyes narrowed in recognition, then widened in uncertainty. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" The second EMT asked, gently turning her head to check her pupils. "Can you tell me your name?" Alana tried to respond, but only managed a hoarse whisper before another wave of dizziness washed over her. "We need to get her to the hospital," the first EMT said urgently. "Help me get these cuffs off." "She's under arrest," Kane barked, stepping forward. His badge caught the strobing lights as he loomed over them. "She needs immediate medical attention," the EMT countered firmly. "Protocol says the cuffs come off." After a tense moment, Kane nodded to another officer, who produced a key. The cuffs finally clicked open, leaving angry red marks on Alana's wrists. The EMTs carefully lifted her onto a stretcher, strapping her in with practiced efficiency. As they wheeled her toward the ambulance, Kane's voice carried across the scene. "Another thug off the street!" The crowd's angry response was cut off as the ambulance doors closed. Inside, the younger EMT began hooking up monitors while his partner prepared an IV line. The siren wailed to life above them. "Let's see some ID," the first EMT muttered, reaching for the wallet in Alana's sweatpants pocket. He flipped it open, probably expecting a driver's license. Instead, his fingers froze on the distinctive federal credentials. His face drained of color as he read the identification. The gold FBI shield gleamed under the ambulance's interior lights. Below it, clear black letters spelled out, Dr. Alanna Pierce, Director, Federal Bureau of Investigation. "Oh my God," he whispered, looking down at his patient's battered face with new understanding as the ambulance raced through the night, its sirens screaming a warning to all who heard it. The harsh fluorescent lights of the emergency room pierced through Alanna's eyelids as consciousness slowly returned. Her throat felt like sandpaper, and every breath brought a dull ache to her ribs. The steady beep of monitors mixed with hurried footsteps and hushed voices around her. "Blood pressure's stabilizing," a nurse said softly, adjusting something above Alanna's head. Through half-opened eyes, she saw two security guards near her door, their heads bent close together in conversation. The taller one kept glancing at her with poorly concealed awe. "That's really her, Director Pierce?" he whispered to his partner. "FBI credentials don't lie," the other replied. "Word's already spreading." The change in the hospital staff was immediate and obvious. A doctor who had been briskly efficient minutes earlier now approached with careful deference, his clipboard clutched tight against his chest. "Director Pierce," he said gently, "I'm Dr. Matthews. How's your pain level? We've documented the bruising around your throat and neck." Alanna tried to speak, but managed only a raspy whisper. A nurse quickly brought her ice chips, handling the cup like it was made of crystal. "Small sips," the nurse advised, her eyes wide with concern. "Your throat took quite a beating." The floor's charge nurse appeared in the doorway, speaking in urgent tones to someone in the hallway. More footsteps approached rapidly, these ones heavy, anxious. Police Chief Warren burst into the room, his face ashen. His uniform was hastily arranged, tie slightly crooked, suggesting he'd dressed in a hurry. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool hospital air. "Madam Director," he stammered. We had no idea." His hands twisted his hat nervously. "If we'd known who you were." Alanna's voice came out hoarse but clear enough to cut him off. "You knew I was human." The chief fell silent, his mouth working but no words coming out. The medical staff exchanged glances, tension filling the room. Outside, a growing commotion could be heard. Camera flashes strobed through the windows, and raised voices carried through the walls. A security guard stepped in quickly. "Media's swarming the entrance," he reported. "The videos are everywhere, Twitter, Facebook. Cops choke out woman for resisting is trending." Dr. Matthews moved protectively closer to Alanna's bed. "We can move you to a more secure floor." The door burst open again, and Ruth Pierce swept in like a storm front, her usual dignified composure cracking with worry and rage. Her church clothes were wrinkled, suggesting she'd thrown on a coat over her nightgown. "Baby girl," she breathed, rushing to Alanna's side. Her hands were gentle as they touched her daughter's face, but her eyes blazed as they took in the bruising. "Look what they did to you." "Mama," Alanna whispered, managing a weak smile. "I'm okay." "You are not okay," Ruth snapped, though her fingers remained tender as they smoothed Alanna's hair. She turned to fix Chief Warren with a glare that made him take a step back. "This is what your officers do? Choke out women in the street?" "Mrs. Pierce," the chief began, "there will be a full investigation." "There better be more than that," Ruth cut in. She turned back to Alanna, her voice softening. "But right now, you need to rest and heal. We'll handle this right. Not fast, but right." Through the next few hours, Alanna drifted in and out of sleep as Ruth kept vigil. The bruises darkened, but the swelling began to subside. Outside, the media circus grew, their cameras catching only glimpses through the windows. As dawn approached, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Dr. Matthews signed the discharge papers. "You should take it easy for a few days," he advised, Your throat will be sore, and those ribs need time." A plain black sedan pulled up to a side entrance as hospital security cleared a path. Ruth helped Alana into a loose sweater, supporting her as they made their way down the quiet hallway. "Head high," Ruth whispered to her daughter. "They didn't break you." Alana straightened despite the pain, her mother's strength flowing into her. Together, they walked through the automatic doors into the cool morning air, leaving the chaos of the night behind as the sun climbed higher over Riverton's skyline. The aroma of chicken soup and fresh cornbread filled Ruth's dining room as evening settled over Riverton. Steam rose from covered dishes spread across the oak table. Comfort food brought by church members who'd been arriving steadily since word spread about what happened. Alana sat gingerly in her mother's favorite chair, a soft cushion supporting her back. The bruises on her neck had darkened to purple, stark against her brown skin. Across the table, Keon Brooks and his grandmother, Mrs. Ellen, sat quietly. Keon's hands were still trembling slightly as he held his spoon. "You need to eat something, baby," Ruth urged, ladling more of Sister Wilson's chicken soup into Alana's bowl. "Keep your strength up." The TV hummed softly in the background until the evening news anchor's voice suddenly grew sharper. Everyone turned to look. "Breaking news in the Riverton police brutality case," the anchor announced. "Mayor Thompson has just suspended Sergeant Wade Kane and Officers Peterson and Martinez, pending a full investigation into last night's violent arrest." The footage played again, shaky cell phone video showing the struggle. Alana being forced to the ground, the horrifying moments of the chokehold. Mrs. Ellen gasped softly, reaching for Keon's hand. The scene cut to the mayor at a podium, his face grave. "This administration has zero tolerance for excessive force. Chief Warren has promised full cooperation with both Internal Affairs and the FBI." "About time," muttered Deacon Williams, who'd stopped by with his wife's famous casserole. "Took them long enough to do the right thing." "They had no choice," Ruth said, switching off the TV. "Not with the whole world watching now." Alana noticed Mrs. Ellen dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She reached across the table, wincing slightly at the movement, and covered the older woman's hand with her own. "Keon's safe," she said softly. "That's what matters most." Mrs. Ellen squeezed her hand. "When I think what could have happened to my boy," her voice cracked. "If you hadn't been there." "But she was there," Ruth interjected firmly. "The Lord makes no mistakes about where he puts his people." The doorbell chimed again. This time, it was Miss Patricia from 3 doors down, bearing fresh-baked rolls and determination. "The whole neighborhood's talking," she reported, settling into an empty chair. "People are saying this is it. This is what's finally going to change things in Riverton." "The videos don't lie," Deacon Williams nodded. "Even the police union can't spin this one away." "My study group is organizing a rally," Keon spoke up, his voice stronger now. "Not a protest, more like a community meeting. We want to show support, share stories." He looked at Alana. "If you'd come speak?" "Keon," his grandmother warned, "the director needs to rest." "It's okay," Alana assured her, though her throat still ached. "We need young voices in this conversation. Young leaders." More neighbors arrived as evening deepened. Miss Loretta with her sweet potato pie, Mr. James carrying containers of his wife's famous gumbo. The dining room filled with quiet conversation and cautious optimism. "I'll testify," Keon said suddenly, his young face set with determination. "About everything that happened. About how they were treating me before you showed up. About what they did to you. Whatever you need." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what it meant for a young black man to testify against police in Riverton. "You're brave," Alana told him, "but let's focus on healing first. Both of us." The visitors gradually departed as night settled in. Ruth saw them out, accepting hugs and promises of more food tomorrow. Keon and his grandmother were the last to leave, the young man pausing at the door. "Thank you," he said simply, "for not walking by, for stopping." After they left, Ruth bustled around the kitchen, wrapping leftovers and loading the dishwasher. Alana sat heavily on the living room couch, the day's events finally catching up with her. Her mother appeared with a soft blanket, the one Alana had loved since childhood. "You're staying here tonight," Ruth said, brooking no argument as she tucked the blanket around her daughter. "Doctor's orders." "Mama, I'm not a child," Alana protested weakly, but settled into the familiar comfort. Through the front window, headlights swept across the wall as a car drove slowly past the house. It paused, engine idling, before moving on into the darkness. Ruth's hands stilled for a moment on the blanket, but she said nothing. The house creaked and settled around them, filled with decades of memories, both sweet and bitter. Outside, crickets chirped in the warm evening air, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed briefly before fading away. Morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the federal building in downtown Riverton. Inside her office, U.S. Attorney Marta Velasquez studied the dark bruises on Alana Pierce's neck with barely contained anger. "They could have killed you," Marta said, her voice tight. She gestured to one of the leather chairs facing her desk. "Sit. You shouldn't even be here today." Alana lowered herself carefully into the chair. Despite the pain medication, every movement pulled at sore muscles. "We need to talk, Marta." "There's something you don't know." Marta raised an eyebrow, settling behind her desk. Files and legal pads covered its surface. Evidence of sleepless hours spent building cases. About the assault? "The videos are everywhere. We're already preparing charges." "No." Alana leaned forward slightly. "About why I was really in Riverton. Operation Daylight." Marta's expression shifted. As a veteran prosecutor, she recognized the weight in those words. "A sealed investigation? Started 3 months ago." Alana's voice was hoarse but steady. "The FBI has been tracking a corruption ring inside Riverton PD. They call themselves the Greys, Kane's crew." Marta breathed. Her hand reached for a legal pad, instinctively taking notes. More than just a crew, they're organized, connected. Alana pulled a thin folder from her bag, sliding it across the desk. Narcotics skimming from evidence. Protection rackets targeting small businesses. Links to the Sierra Cartel's local operations. Marta flipped through the documents, her frown deepening. "How deep does it go?" "At least 12 officers confirmed, maybe twice that many involved peripherally. Kane's their enforcer, but he's not the top. We've been building a RICO case." "Had been building," Marta corrected, looking up sharply. "This changes everything. You know that." Alana nodded grimly. "The moment Kane put his hands on me, he gave their defense attorneys a gift. They'll claim the entire investigation was tainted by bias. Personal vendetta." "They'd be right." Marta's tone was gentle but firm. "No judge will let you anywhere near this case now. You'll have to recuse." "Publicly, yes." Alana's eyes held steel. "But I'm not stepping away. I'll quarterback from the shadows if I have to." "Alana," a knock interrupted them. One of Marta's assistants entered, tablet in hand. "Ma'am, you need to see this." "Tech just analyzed the body cam footage from last night." Marta took the tablet, studying the timeline display. Her jaw tightened. "There's a gap. 3 minutes and 20 seconds missing. Right during the..." She glanced at Alana's neck. "During the chokehold," Alana finished. "They're already destroying evidence." "This is a federal crime," Marta said, fingers drumming on her desk. "Tampering with..." Her phone buzzed. She answered, listening intently. The color drained from her face. "When?" she demanded. "Anyone hurt?" She looked at Alana. "Your mother's church. Someone threw a brick through the stained glass window about 10 minutes ago. Alana was already standing, ignoring the pain that shot through her shoulders. "There's more," Marta continued, still listening to the phone. The brick had gray paint smeared across it. A message. 20 minutes later, they stood before the shattered window of Ruth's church. Colored glass crunched under their shoes. The morning sun caught the jagged edges, casting broken rainbows across the sidewalk. Ruth stood nearby, directing the maintenance man who was measuring for a temporary board. Her voice was steady, but Alana saw how her hands trembled. The brick lay where it had fallen among the glass shards. The gray paint was still wet, dripping like tears down its rough surface. Alana's fists clenched at her sides as she stared at the destruction. Her voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. "This isn't over." Several elderly church members had gathered, whispering among themselves. Sister Wilson clutched her worn Bible close. "First, they hurt our children," she said. "Now they attack God's house?" Marta stepped closer to Alana, speaking low. "This changes the timeline. We need to move faster." "Agreed." Alana watched as more congregation members arrived, their faces a mixture of anger and determination. Some carried brooms and dustpans, already moving to help clean up. "They're escalating, getting sloppy, and giving us more evidence," Marta added. She pulled out her phone, thumbs flying across the screen. "I'm expediting those warrant requests. Kane and his people just moved themselves up the priority list." A police cruiser rolled past the church, moving slowly. The officer inside watched them through mirrored sunglasses before accelerating away. Ruth approached, glass crunching under her sensible shoes. She touched the broken window frame, decades of memories in her eyes. "Your father helped install this window," she said quietly to Alana. 30 years ago. Flickering neon from Mike's all-night diner cast alternating pink and blue shadows across the nearly empty parking lot. At this hour, only truckers and night shift workers occupied the vinyl booths inside. Officer Blake Hoyt's hands gripped his steering wheel, knuckles white, as he scanned the lot for the third time. A dark sedan pulled in quietly, parking 2 spaces away. Hoyt's breath caught as Alana Pierce stepped out, wearing a plain windbreaker despite the warm night. She moved with careful steps, her injuries from Kane's attack still fresh. Hoyt got out, trying to look casual as he approached. His uniform was at home. He wore jeans and a Riverton Raiders baseball cap. "Dr. Pierce," he whispered, "thanks for meeting me." "Let's walk," she said, gesturing toward the edge of the lot, where shadows pooled beneath old oak trees. Her voice was still rough from the chokehold. They fell into step, maintaining enough distance to look like strangers having separate cigarette breaks. The diner's neon grew distant. "I've been wanting to come forward," Hoyt said, words tumbling out. "Since I joined the force last year, the things I've seen. The Greys, they run everything. Kane's just the muscle. There's more of them, higher up." Alana listened, face neutral. "Why now? What they did to you?" Hoyt's voice cracked. "And that kid, Keon. It's wrong, all of it. The shakedowns, the missing evidence, He swallowed hard. "I can't sleep anymore." A car pulled into the lot. They both tensed until its headlights swept past. "They have meetings," Hoyt continued. "Poker nights at Lieutenant Darlow's house. That's where they talk freely. About operations, about who needs teaching lessons. They made me watch once when they caught a teenager with pills. Said it was training." Alana's jaw tightened. "Would you be willing to wear a wire?" Hoyt's step faltered. "They'd kill me if they found out. We can protect you." She turned to face him fully. "But I need evidence, Blake. Real proof, not just witness testimony." He ran a shaking hand through his hair. "The next poker night is Thursday. Darlow's hosting again. You don't have to decide now." "I'll do it." His voice steadied. For that kid. For everyone they've hurt. Across town, Ruth Pierce's living room had become a command center. Despite the late hour, 6 church elders sat with phones and notebooks, heads bent together over Ruth's coffee table. "Sister Wilson, you take the East Side congregations," Ruth directed, passing out printed phone lists. "Sister Jenkins, you coordinate with the Baptist Alliance. Brother Thomas, you handle the Methodist Circuit." "What do we tell people?" Sister Jenkins asked, adjusting her reading glasses. "Tell them to call City Hall every day, multiple times. Tell them to demand answers about the assault on my daughter, about Kane's record, about the missing body cam footage." Ruth's voice carried the authority of decades leading choir practice. "They ignore one voice. They can't ignore hundreds. The seniors in this city built these streets," Brother Thomas added, "paid these taxes, raised these children. Time to remind them who really owns Riverton." 3 days later, Alana sat in an unmarked van 2 blocks from Darlow's house, headphones pressed to her ears. Hoyt's wire transmitted clearly through the poker game's cigarette smoke and clinking bottles. "Kid's got potential," Kane's voice crackled through. "Learned quick after that corner lesson last month." "Speaking of lessons," Darlow drawled, "heard some troublemakers by the community college need reminding about territory." "Already handled," Kane replied. "Nothing like a little late-night visit to keep the kids in line." "Right, rookie?" "Yes, sir." Hoyt's voice was steady despite his fear. "Very educational." Laughter rippled through the transmission. "See? That's what I mean. Quick learner." The game continued. Hoyt captured every boast, every threat, every casual admission of brutality. Each word another nail in their coffin. Near midnight, Hoyt made his excuses and left. 10 minutes later, he slipped into the van's side door, hands trembling as he removed the wire. "You did well," Alana said softly, taking the recorder. "That's solid evidence." "They were talking about more tonight than usual," Hoyt whispered. "Something big coming. Drug shipments, payoffs. One step at a time." She squeezed his shoulder gently. "You're not alone anymore?" The young officer nodded, but his eyes kept darting to the van's tinted windows. In the distance, a police siren wailed, making him flinch. "I should go," he said. "Separate exits, like you said." "Same time next week," Alana confirmed. "We'll have backup nearby." "Just keep doing what you're doing." Hoyt slipped out into the darkness, shoulders hunched against imagined watchers. Alana watched him go, the recorder heavy in her hands. On it, Kane's voice bragged about broken bones and terrorized teenagers, each word sealing his fate. But first, they needed more. Proof that would be bulletproof in court. In her pocket, her phone buzzed with a text from Ruth. 300 calls to City Hall today. Tomorrow we double it." The old wooden pews of Greater Hope Baptist Church creaked under the weight of a full house. Morning sunlight streamed through stained glass, painting rainbow patterns across aged faces set with determination. Ruth Pierce stood at the pulpit, her silver hair catching the light as she led the congregation in "We Shall Overcome." Ethan Cho sat in the back row, his digital recorder capturing every note. He watched seniors who'd marched in the 60s stand straight-backed despite their canes, voices rising in harmony. The song ended, but the energy remained electric. "We've been quiet too long," Ruth declared, her voice carrying to the rafters. "Our silence was never peace. It was pain." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. In the front row, Sister Jenkins dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. "Brother Cho is here today," Ruth continued, gesturing toward Ethan. "He wants to hear our stories, the truth about what's been happening in Riverton. Who wants to start?" A forest of weathered hands rose. Ethan moved to the front, recorder ready. Mr. Washington, 82, spoke first. "My grandson stopped 3 times in 1 week. same corner, same officers. No reason given. His voice trembled with anger. They took his college money, said it must be drug money. Boy works 2 jobs to save that. Sister Martinez stood, despite her arthritis. My Carlos, rest his soul, beaten in '82 for suspicious behavior. He was walking home from the factory, 30 years at that plant, and they treated him like a criminal. One by one, the stories poured out. Decades of random stops, missing money, broken bones, children terrorized, complaints ignored. Each testimony built on the last, painting a picture of systematic abuse. Across town in her chambers, Judge Inez Carver reviewed the warrant applications Marta had submitted. Her reading glasses perched on her nose as she examined each document with practiced precision. The evidence was mounting: bank records showing suspicious deposits, property deeds in shell company names, phone records linking the Grays to known drug traffickers. She signed each warrant with careful strokes, her signature carrying the weight of law. "Make it count," she whispered to the empty room. In her temporary office at the federal building, Alana spread the overtime ledger across her desk. The numbers told their own story. Officers logging impossible hours, double billing for security details, padding timesheets for special operations that coincided with spikes in drug activity. She traced one column with her finger. Kane's overtime had tripled after major drug busts, but the seized evidence amounts kept shrinking. The pattern was clear to anyone who knew where to look. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marta. Warrants approved. Teams ready. Back at the church, Ethan interviewed Mrs. Thompson, 75, who gripped her walker as she spoke. My great-grandson is 5. Already knows to be scared of police cars. That ain't right. This is our city, too. We built it. We deserve better. Ruth watched from the pulpit, noting how the seniors sat straighter with each shared story. This wasn't just testimony. It was transformation. Decades of swallowed fear becoming strength. Evening settled over Riverton. In Ruth's living room, Alana sat with her mother as Ethan's radio show began. Good evening, Riverton. Tonight's special report. Who owns the badge? The familiar voices of church members filled the airwaves. Mr. Washington's testimony crackled with clarity. Sister Martinez's grief echoed through decades. Mrs. Thompson's demand for dignity rang true. Between each clip, Ethan provided context, dates, locations, patterns of behavior. The phone lines lit up immediately. My boy, too, one caller said. Same corner, same officers. They took my savings in '95, another added. Said I couldn't prove it was mine. The calls kept coming. Ruth reached for Alana's hand as they listened. For the first time since the attack, a small smile crossed Alana's face. The wall of silence was cracking. This is your city, Ethan's voice concluded the hour. These are your streets. These are your badges, paid for by your taxes. The question isn't just who owns the badge, it's who will stand up to make it mean something again. The radio fell silent, but Ruth's living room hummed with possibility. Outside, car horns honked in support. Phones buzzed with messages from neighbors who'd listened. Your brother would be proud, Ruth said softly, squeezing Alana's hand. Alana's smile grew stronger, though her throat still bore fading bruises. The truth was finally being spoken, not in whispers, but in strong, clear voices that could no longer be ignored. The neon sign of Mel's all-night diner buzzed against the gray morning sky. Inside, Alana Pierce sat in a corner booth, her reflection ghosted in the rain-streaked window. Across from her, Union President Darlow stirred his coffee with practiced casualness, his suit jacket stretched tight across his shoulders. I appreciate you meeting me, Alana said, her voice carrying just far enough to reach him. The diner was nearly empty, a couple of truckers at the counter, a waitress refilling sugar dispensers. Darlow's smile didn't reach his eyes. Always time for a chat with federal law enforcement. Though I heard you're on leave. He emphasized the last word, testing for weakness. Administrative leave, Alana corrected. Temporary. She lifted her own coffee cup, untouched and growing cold. Her neck still showed traces of yellowing bruises. Shame about that incident, Darlow said, leaning back. Officers make split-second decisions. Can't always be perfect. His tone suggested rehearsed press statements. Alana set her cup down and reached into her bag. Speaking of decisions, she said, sliding a manila envelope across the scratched Formica table. I thought you might find this interesting. Darlow made no move to touch it. I don't deal in mystery packages. Open it. He sighed theatrically and flipped the envelope open with one manicured finger. His expression froze as he saw the contents. Photocopied pages of overtime logs, bank statements, property records. Creative accounting, Alana commented, especially those highway patrol shifts. 3 officers claiming the same hours on opposite sides of town. That must have been quite a trick. Darlow's laugh was practiced, but tight around the edges. You don't scare me, Director Pierce. Every department has paperwork issues. Nothing here a good auditor couldn't explain. Officer Chen might disagree, Alana said quietly. And Officer Martinez. Officer Thompson, too. They're all very interested in protecting their pensions. The color drained from Darlow's face, though his smile remained fixed. You're bluffing. Rodriguez already gave a statement. Full immunity. Alana took another manila envelope from her bag. Would you like to see the transcript? Darlow's hand twitched toward it, then stopped. You're overplaying your hand. 1 dirty cop making wild claims. 8 dirty cops, Alana corrected. So far, all with documentation. All willing to testify about the Gray's operation. The overtime fraud is just the beginning. A muscle jumped in Darlow's jaw. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Think about your retirement, James, Alana said, using his first name deliberately. 28 years on the force. That's a nice pension waiting. Would be a shame to lose it over loyalty to Kane. You threatening me? Darlow's voice dropped to a growl. Offering you a choice. Alana slid a business card across the table. U.S. Attorney's Office. Make the call by tonight. Darlow's knuckles whitened around his coffee cup. You'll regret this. You have no idea what you're walking into. I know exactly what I'm walking into, Alana replied. The question is, do you know what you're protecting? How deep does Kane's operation really go? The waitress approached with a coffee pot. Darlow waved her away with forced cheerfulness. Kane's a decorated officer, he said when she was gone. Community servant. You're chasing shadows. I'm chasing evidence. Alana tapped the envelopes. Bank records don't lie. Neither do property deeds or phone logs. The choice is simple. Save yourself or go down with him. Rain drummed against the windows. In the kitchen, a short-order cook called out an order. The normalcy of the diner made the tension at their booth feel surreal. You've got nothing, Darlow said, but his voice lacked conviction. Check your voicemail, Alana replied. Rodriguez's statement should have hit your lawyer's inbox 10 minutes ago. I'm told the part about the warehouse by the river is particularly interesting. Darlow's phone was out before he could stop himself. His fingers trembled slightly as he checked messages. Times change, Alana said softly. The old ways of doing business, they're done. Be smart about this. She stood, leaving both envelopes on the table. Darlow stared at them like they might bite. Tonight, she reminded him. After that, deals are off the table. The bell above the door chimed as she stepped out into the drizzle. The morning air was thick with the smell of wet asphalt. Across the street, a black SUV idled, its windows tinted dark. Alana noted the plate number without seeming to look. Ohio tags, starting with XRG. The rain beaded on her jacket as she walked to her car, each drop distinct and cold against her skin. Behind her, through the diner's window, Darlow sat motionless, the evidence of his crumbling empire spread before him on the plastic tablecloth. The fog rolled thick off the river, turning streetlights into hazy orbs. Officer Blake Hoyt stood in the shadow of Warehouse 17, his heart hammering against the wire taped to his chest. The worn brick buildings loomed like ancient sentinels along the waterfront, their windows dark and watchful. At precisely midnight, headlights cut through the mist. 3 vehicles pulled up: Kane's pickup, a black SUV with the familiar XRG plates, and a white panel van. Hoyt straightened his uniform, reminding himself to breathe normally. "Evening, rookie," Kane called out, boots crunching on broken asphalt. "Playing security guard tonight?" "Yes, sir," Hoyt managed, proud his voice didn't shake. "All quiet here." 2 men emerged from the SUV, Darlow and another officer Hoyt recognized from the Greys. The panel van's side door slid open with a metallic groan, revealing 3 men in plain clothes. Their movements were careful, practiced. "Our friends from down south," Kane announced, clapping one on the shoulder. "Let's talk business." Inside the warehouse, naked bulbs cast harsh shadows between towering storage racks. Kane's crew and the cartel men formed a loose circle. Hoyt positioned himself by the door, exactly as planned. "Monthly numbers are good," Kane said, unzipping a gym bag. Stacks of cash emerged, rubber-banded and neat. Extra sweet since that evidence locker accident last week. One of the cartel men nodded. "And our merchandise?" "Moving smooth through the east side," Darlow reported. "School zones are gold mines if you know how to work them." Hoyt's stomach turned, but he kept his face neutral. The wire caught every word. The white van's cargo proved to be boxes of pills, prescription labels intact. "Straight from the evidence room," Kane bragged. "Logged as destroyed." Suddenly, floodlights blazed through the high windows. "FBI! Everyone on the ground!" The warehouse erupted in chaos. Doors crashed open as federal agents swarmed in, weapons drawn. Kane lunged for his sidearm, but found 3 laser sights already dancing on his chest. "Don't!" Marta Velasquez's voice rang out. She stepped through the door, badge gleaming. "It's over." Outside, news vans screeched to a halt. Ethan Cho's voice crackled over car radios and emergency scanners. "Breaking news! Federal agents have just raided a warehouse on River Street. Multiple Riverton police officers are being taken into custody." Kane's eyes found Hoyt. "You little rat!" he snarled as agents cuffed him. "No," Hoyt replied, voice steady at last. "I'm a real cop." The arrest operation moved like clockwork. Evidence teams photographed the money, the drugs, the ledgers. Marked bills from previous deals were logged and bagged. Each handcuffed officer and cartel member was led out into the glare of news cameras. Across town, Ruth's church filled with elderly parishioners glued to their phones and radios. As each arrest was announced, cheers erupted. Old women who had lost sons to police violence wept in the pews. Men who had been harassed for decades stood and sang. "Kane, Darlow, Phillips." Ethan's voice listed the names. Sources say this operation, codenamed Daylight, has been months in the making. In the church basement, someone started playing piano. Seniors who had marched in civil rights protests half a century ago rose to dance, their arthritis forgotten in the joy of the moment. "This is real," Ruth told her fellow choir members, tears streaming. "Our babies didn't die for nothing." At the FBI command post 6 blocks from the warehouse, Alana watched the operation feeds. When the last suspect was secured, she drove to the church. The celebration was still going strong at 2 a.m. She found her mother in her usual pew, hands clasped in prayer. Ruth looked up as Alana sat beside her. "We did it," Alana said, pulling her mother close. Ruth hugged back fiercely, then whispered in her ear, "Not yet." Around them, the celebration continued. Keon Brooks and his grandmother shared slices of sweet potato pie with Officer Hoyt's family. Judge Inez quietly took notes, while elderly residents lined up to give testimony about past abuses. Ethan Cho's live broadcast captured it all: the songs, the tears, the prayers of thanksgiving. Outside the church windows, dawn was still hours away. But inside, in the warm light of justice, long denied and finally delivered, it felt like morning had already come to Riverton. The hymns and chatter echoed off the old walls. "Free at last!" someone shouted, and the crowd took up the refrain. "Free at last!" Dawn painted Alana's office walls in pale gold as she spread evidence photos across her desk. The warehouse bust had yielded mountains of documentation: ledgers, phone records, marked bills. Victory felt close enough to taste. Her phone buzzed. Marta's name flashed on the screen. "The main evidence drive is gone," Marta said without preamble. Her voice was tight with barely controlled rage. Alana's stomach dropped. "What?" "The drive containing Hoyt's recordings, the financial records, everything. It's missing from the secure locker." Alana switched to speaker and pulled up the evidence room security feed. The footage showed a figure in a maintenance uniform entering at 3 a.m. using valid credentials. They walked directly to the correct shelf, removed the drive, and left. No hesitation. No searching. "An inside job," Alana said. "They knew exactly where to look." "There's more," Marta continued. "The backup server was wiped. Professional job." Alana's hands clenched. Months of careful work, gone in minutes. She dispatched a forensics team immediately, but her gut told her they'd find nothing useful. The morning crawled by in a haze of emergency meetings and damage control. Then, at 2 p.m., her worst fears materialized in a text from Marta. "Hoyt found dead." The scene was staged to look like suicide. Service weapon, typed note, empty bottle of pills. But Alana saw the truth in the details. Slight bruising around the wrists, carpet fibers under the fingernails, the angle of the fatal shot, all wrong for self-infliction. "He fought back," the medical examiner whispered, pointing to defensive wounds on Hoyt's hands. That evening, as Alana sat in her office drafting a statement about Hoyt's death, her phone exploded with notifications. A video was spreading across social media like wildfire. Body cam footage from the night of her choking, but drastically altered. The doctored version showed her throwing the first punch, attacking Kane unprovoked. "Clear evidence of FBI overreach," the police union spokesperson declared on live TV. "Director Pierce is waging a personal vendetta against honest officers." Within hours, the grand jury announced their decision. No indictment for Kane or any other officer involved in her assault. The police union immediately called for her resignation, branding her a lawless tyrant destroying department morale. The city's mood shifted like a weather vane in a storm. Protest groups gathered outside the federal building, split between those demanding justice and those defending the police. The local news ran side-by-side images: Alana's bruised face from the hospital versus the doctored footage of her attack. "They're playing a dangerous game," Marta warned during a brief meeting, "making you look like the aggressor while positioning themselves as victims." Before Alana could respond, her phone rang. The number was her mother's neighbor. "Fire!" the woman screamed. "Ruth's house!" Alana broke every speed limit racing to her childhood home. 2 blocks away, she could already see the orange glow against the night sky. Flames poured from the windows of the small Victorian where she'd grown up, where her brother's photos still hung in the front hall, where her father's old records filled the basement. Ruth stood on the sidewalk in her nightgown, supported by neighbors who had pulled her out just in time. Smoke and ash swirled in the air like evil confetti. "I woke up to the smoke alarm," Ruth said, her voice hoarse. "They broke in through the back door, spread accelerant everywhere." Fire trucks wailed in the distance, but Alana knew they were too late. The flames had too strong a hold. She watched helplessly as the roof began to cave, sending sparks shooting skyward. The heat was so intense it forced the crowd back another 20 feet. Family photos, her father's jazz collection, her brother's Letterman jacket, her own FBI Academy graduation portrait, everything that anchored their history in this city was turning to ash. Decades of Christmas mornings, Sunday dinners, and front porch conversations disappeared into the inferno. A wall collapsed with a thunderous crash. Ruth let out a small sob, but stayed upright, dignity intact even in her nightclothes. Neighbors brought blankets, offered spare rooms, called relatives. The community that had celebrated justice just hours ago now gathered to witness its violent backlash. Tears cut clean tracks through the soot on Alana's face as she watched her childhood home burn. This wasn't just about evidence anymore, or careers, or even justice. The Greys had made it deeply, brutally personal. The fire's glow reflected in the windows of surrounding houses, where faces peered out in fear and sorrow. Sirens echoed off brick walls. Emergency lights painted the scene in alternating red and blue, the same colors that had flashed across her vision as Kane choked her on that dark corner. In the distance, a car horn sounded 3 short blasts, the Greys' signal. They were watching, making sure their message was received. Ruth's hand found Alana's in the dark. Both women stood silent as their home, and all its memories, burned to the ground. Dawn crept over Riverton, pale sunlight revealing the full devastation of the fire. The Pierce family home was now a blackened skeleton, wisps of smoke still rising from the ruins. Ruth sat on a neighbor's porch, wrapped in a borrowed floral shawl, her eyes fixed on the destruction. Alana paced the sidewalk, her phone buzzing constantly with messages she ignored. The smell of smoke clung to her clothes, a constant reminder of what the Greys had taken from them. "Baby," Ruth called softly. "Come sit." Alana stopped pacing but remained standing. "I'm done hiding, Mama." "Done playing their game." "Good," Ruth said, surprising her daughter. "Because hiding never saved anyone in this town." Alana pulled out her phone and sent a mass text. "Emergency meeting, 2 hours, St. Mark's basement." The church basement had survived countless community crises over the decades. Now, folding chairs formed a circle under flickering fluorescent lights. Marta Velasquez arrived first, legal pad already in hand. Ethan Cho brought coffee and day-old donuts from the corner shop. Judge Inez Carver slipped in quietly, her judicial robe exchanged for a simple sweater. Ruth's elders' council filled several chairs, their faces set with determination. A handful of honest officers, those who had worked with Hoyt, completed the circle. "They think they've won," Alana began, standing in the center. Her voice was hoarse from smoke inhalation, but steady. "They think burning down our home means we'll back down. But they've made a mistake. They've shown their desperation," Marta added, pen poised over her legal pad. "Exactly." Alana nodded. "Kane's gotten sloppy. The fire, Hoyt's murder, they're panic moves. And panic leaves traces." Judge Inez spoke up, her voice carrying decades of courtroom authority. "I've been reviewing property records. Kane owns 6 rental properties through shell companies, all purchased with cash in the last 5 years. More than a sergeant's salary could explain," one of the honest officers noted. "The pension system," Ruth's friend Martha suddenly said. Everyone turned to the elderly woman. "My Harold was on the force 40 years. Nothing scared those boys more than losing their pensions. Ethan Cho was already typing on his laptop. The police pension fund requires a clean record. Any felony conviction means automatic forfeiture. Marta finished, writing furiously. And civil asset forfeiture could freeze those properties while we investigate their purchase. The plan began taking shape. Ethan would run a series exposing Kane's property empire. Judge Inez would sign the forfeiture warrants. The honest officers would ensure the paperwork moved through channels without warning. Ruth's counsel would organize daily protests outside the pension board meetings. Kane will have to surface, Alana said. He'll want to negotiate, to make a deal. He'll try to meet somewhere private, one officer warned, somewhere he can control. Let him think he's in control, Alana replied. That's when he makes mistakes. They spent the next hour mapping out every detail. Marta drafted the legal documents. Ethan prepared his broadcast scripts. The elders organized their phone trees. Judge Inez reviewed precedents for the warrants. We move at dawn, Alana concluded. Kane will wake up to frozen accounts and property liens. By noon, the pension board will have their preliminary report. By evening, every senior citizen in Riverton will be calling their council member about police pension reform. The coalition began dispersing, each with their assigned tasks. Ruth remained seated, watching her daughter with quiet pride. When the room had emptied except for them, she stood and crossed to Alana. Your brother would be proud, Ruth said softly, placing a weathered hand against Alana's cheek. So proud of who you've become. Alana leaned into her mother's touch, drawing strength from the contact. I couldn't do this alone. You're not alone, Ruth assured her. We're with you. All of us. She straightened Alana's collar with the automatic gesture of a mother who had done so countless times before. Now, let's go make some noise. Through the church's basement windows, morning light was growing stronger, burning away the lingering smoke that hung over Riverton. In the parking lot, cars started up as their unlikely coalition headed out to set their trap. The time for hiding was over. The parking structure loomed like a concrete fortress, shadows dancing between support pillars. Alana stood on level 3, her back against a concrete wall, waiting. The city sprawled below, a maze of streetlights and dark alleys. A black SUV growled up the ramp, headlights off. Kane emerged first, a police-issue baton already in hand. 2 heavies flanked him. Alana recognized them from the original choking incident. Both wore dark jackets that couldn't quite hide their shoulder holsters. No badge tonight. Alana's voice carried across the empty garage. Kane twirled the baton. Didn't think we needed the formalities. 3 against 1? Still can't fight fair? The heavies spread out, trying to flank her. Their footsteps echoed off concrete walls. Kane's face twisted into an ugly smile. You should have stayed down the first time. He lunged, baton whistling through the air. Alana slipped left, letting it crack against concrete. Her elbow found his ribs, precise. Brutal. Kane stumbled back with a grunt. The first heavy rushed in. Alana grabbed the nearest car door handle, yanked it open into his charge. The impact rang through the structure. She followed through with a palm heel to his temple, then drove her knee into his midsection. An armbar took him down, face pressed to oil-stained concrete. The second heavy was smarter, more cautious. He circled, looking for an opening. Kane recovered, baton ready. Getting tired? Kane taunted. No backup this time. Don't need it. Alana kept both men in view, stance balanced. They came at her together. Alana used their size against them, ducking under wild swings. Her defensive training took over. Deflect, counter, control. Each movement precise. Nothing wasted. The second heavy caught her shoulder with a glancing blow, but she turned it into momentum, sweeping his legs. Kane pressed his advantage, backing her toward a concrete pillar. The baton came down hard. Alana caught his wrist, twisted. The weapon clattered to the ground, but Kane was ready. He drove forward, slamming her against the pillar. His arms snaked around her throat, the same chokehold from that night on the corner. "Remember this?" he snarled. But Alana was ready. She tucked her chin, protecting her windpipe. Her hips shifted, center of gravity dropping. One smooth motion, rotate, hip throw. Kane hit the ground hard. She could have choked him then, could have given him a taste of his own medicine. Instead, Alana pinned him, one knee on his chest. "You're done," she said. Kane laughed, blood staining his teeth. "Done? I own this city. Always have. Tell me about that." Alana's voice changed, became conversational. "About how you own Riverton." Pride loosened his tongue. "Damn right I do. 20 years keeping the streets quiet, making sure the right people get paid. The cartel people? Someone has to manage distribution. Might as well be us. We know which trucks to stop, which ones to wave through." He grinned. "Your brother never understood that. Had to teach him the hard way." Alana's grip tightened, but her voice stayed steady. "And Officer Hoyt? Couldn't let him talk. Rookies need to learn their place. Like you learned yours?" A new voice cut through the garage. Judge Inez stepped from behind a pillar, recorder in hand. Ethan Cho emerged from another shadow, his microphone catching every word. Kane's face went slack as he realized. Through the garage speakers, his own voice played back. "Had to teach him the hard way." Sirens wailed, growing closer. Red and blue lights began strobing through the structure. But these weren't local cops. FBI tactical teams swarmed in, followed by Marta's federal marshals. "You set me up," Kane spat as agents cuffed him. Alana stood, straightening her jacket. "No, you did that yourself." They led Kane and his heavies away. Blood trickled from his split lip, but his eyes burned with helpless rage. He tried to lunge at her one last time, but the cuffs held. Alana watched from above as they loaded him into a federal transport van. 20 years of corruption and violence, finally ending in a concrete parking garage. The city skyline was starting to lighten, dawn approaching, washing away the darkness that had gripped Riverton for so long. "Director," one of the tactical team leaders approached. "We've secured the scene. Do you need medical?" Alana touched her shoulder where the heavy had landed his punch. It would bruise, but nothing was broken. "I'm fine. Make sure those recordings get logged properly." "Yes, ma'am, and there's someone here to see you." Through the gathering crowd of federal agents, Ruth appeared. She took in her daughter's disheveled appearance, the blood on her knuckles, the fierce light in her eyes. "Baby," she said softly, "let's get you cleaned up." Alana nodded, letting her mother guide her toward the stairs. Behind them, evidence teams photographed the scene, documenting every detail of Kane's final stand. His confession would play across Ethan's radio show within hours. The sun was rising over Riverton, and for the first time in decades, its light would shine on truth. The federal courthouse buzzed with anticipation, its wooden benches packed with Riverton's senior community. Ruth's church members sat shoulder to shoulder in their finest clothes, pressed suits, elegant dresses, and carefully positioned hats that had seen decades of Sundays. The morning light filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Alana sat in the front row beside her mother, both wearing deep blue. Her bruises from the garage fight had faded to yellow, but she held herself straight, dignified. Behind them, Keon and his grandmother settled into their seats, joined by a steady stream of community members who had waited years for this moment. Judge Inez entered, her robes crisp and her expression stern. "All rise." The gallery rustled to its feet. Kane and his co-defendants shuffled in, wearing orange jumpsuits and chains. Their arrogance had finally crumbled, replaced by the hollow-eyed look of men facing real consequences. "Be seated," Judge Inez commanded. She adjusted her reading glasses, lifting the first set of papers. "In the matter of the United States versus Wade Cain et al., regarding violations of the Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, the indictments rolled out like thunder. 20 years of corruption laid bare in clinical legal terms: extortion, drug trafficking, evidence tampering, witness intimidation. Each charge landed like another nail in the Gray's coffin." Cain stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. "Furthermore," Judge Inez continued, "regarding the death of Officer Blake Hoyt." Ruth squeezed Alana's hand. They had found Hoyt's real suicide note, hidden in his sister's Bible. It named names, detailed threats, and exposed the whole operation. Even in death, the young officer had helped bring down the corrupt system he'd tried to fight. Union President Darlow sat separately from Cain, his expensive suit replaced by prison orange. The evidence drive had been found in his office safe, along with detailed records of payoffs and threats. His attempt to save himself by turning on Cain had come too late. On the matter of the falsified body cam footage, Judge Inez's voice sharpened. The tech responsible, a longtime Gray sympathizer, hunched in his seat. The court finds the deliberate manipulation of evidence particularly egregious. Alana watched the sentencing unfold with steady eyes. Cain received 30 years without parole. Darlow got 15. The tech and other conspirators faced varying terms, but none would walk free. The gallery remained silent, but the air crackled with vindication. Then Marta Velasquez rose, carrying a thick document. "Your Honor, the United States would like to present the terms of the negotiated consent decree." Judge Inez nodded. "Proceed." Marta outlined the sweeping changes: an independent oversight board with real teeth, mandatory body cameras with felony penalties for tampering, and a complete restructuring of internal affairs. But the heart of the decree came next. Furthermore, Marta declared, a permanent community elder board will be established, comprised of Riverton seniors, with direct subpoena power over police records and personnel files. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Ruth sat straighter, her eyes bright. "This board," Marta continued, "will have authority to review all use-of-force incidents, with special attention to racial bias and excessive force. Chokeholds and similar respiratory restraints are hereby banned, with criminal penalties for violations." The decree went on, detailed and comprehensive. Every loophole that had protected the Grays was closed. Every dark corner where corruption had festered would now face sunlight and scrutiny. Cain's face twisted as he listened. His empire wasn't just falling. It was being dismantled brick by brick, replaced by the very people he had terrorized. The seniors in their Sunday best would now have power over the badge he had abused. When Judge Inez asked for community statements, Ruth stood. Her voice carried clear and strong across the courtroom. "My son died on these streets 20 years ago," she said. "Today, we reclaim them. Not with violence, but with justice. Not with fear, but with oversight. Not alone, but together." She turned to look at Cain. "You thought you owned this city, but Riverton belongs to all of us. Every child walking to school, every elder at the bus stop, every family just trying to live in peace. Today, we take it back." Judge Inez brought down her gavel, making the decree official. As federal marshals led the defendants away, the gallery remained seated, absorbing the weight of the moment. Decades of struggle had led to this day. Ruth's hand found Alana's again. Tears shone in her eyes as she whispered, "Your brother would be proud." Alana squeezed back, her throat tight with emotion. Around them, other seniors dabbed at their eyes, or nodded in solemn satisfaction. Keon reached forward to touch Alana's shoulder in gratitude. Through the courthouse windows, Riverton spread out below, its streets and neighborhoods now free from the Gray's shadow. The consent decree wasn't just paper, it was a promise to every citizen that justice wasn't just a word. It was a living, breathing thing that belonged to the people. The late summer sun beat down on Ruth's partially rebuilt house as neighbors wielded hammers and paintbrushes. The charred skeleton had been replaced with fresh lumber, and the air smelled of sawdust and new paint instead of ash. Community members of all ages worked together, seniors directing operations from lawn chairs, while younger folks climbed ladders and hauled materials. Alana stood in what would become the new living room, watching through the open frame as Keon helped install windows. He wore a crisp button-down with his sleeves rolled up, looking more confident than the nervous teenager she'd met that fateful night. His U.S. Attorney's Office intern badge hung from his belt, catching the light. "Pass me that level, honey," Ruth called from where she supervised the kitchen reconstruction. She sat in her favorite chair, recovered from the fire and reupholstered by church ladies. A clipboard with paint samples rested in her lap. Alana handed over the tool, then paused to watch Mrs. Johnson from 3 doors down, carefully painting trim. The elderly woman's strokes were slow but precise, her Sunday manicure protected by work gloves. Every neighbor who could hold a brush or direct traffic had shown up to help. "The scholarship committee meets tomorrow," Keon said, stepping inside to grab his water bottle. "We've already got 5 applicants, all local kids wanting to join the Reformed Police Academy." Alana nodded, pride warming her chest. The Blake Hoyt Memorial Scholarship would support recruits from Riverton's poorest neighborhoods who committed to community-oriented policing. Hoyt's sister had cried when they'd proposed it, saying her brother would have loved knowing his death helped create positive change. "How's the internship?" Ruth asked Keon, adjusting her reading glasses to examine a paint swatch. "Amazing," he grinned. Ms. Velasquez, has me helping review community oversight applications. Says I have good instincts for who'll take the responsibility seriously." The sound of power tools paused as Pastor Marcus called everyone to gather for lunch. The workers filed into the yard where church members had set up folding tables loaded with fried chicken, potato salad, and sweet tea. The rebuilding effort had turned into a weeks-long community gathering. "Mail's here," announced Mrs. Thompson, Ruth's neighbor of 30 years, waving an official-looking envelope. "It's for you, Alana. Federal seal." Alana took the letter, already knowing its contents. She'd been waiting for this final piece of vindication. Opening it carefully, she read aloud, "The Office of Professional Responsibility has concluded its investigation and found no ethical violations in Director Pierce's conduct." Applause erupted from the lunch crowd. Ruth dabbed her eyes with a napkin while Keon whooped and punched the air. The ethics investigation's conclusion formally cleared Alana's name and cemented the Gray's corruption as the real crime. "The community fund hit its goal yesterday," Pastor Marcus announced once the cheering died down. "Between church donations and corporate matching, we've raised enough to help rebuild all 3 homes damaged in the retaliation fires." More applause. The senior-led fundraising committee had worked tirelessly, leveraging decades of community connections and moral authority to secure donations. Ruth's house was just the first. 2 other families targeted by the Grays would soon see their homes restored too. As lunch wound down, Alana slipped away to the master bedroom. The walls were freshly drywalled, but not yet painted. She carefully unwrapped the frame she'd brought, a photograph saved from the fire, protected in Ruth's fireproof box. Her brother's young face smiled back at her, frozen in his high school graduation photo. Ruth appeared in the doorway, leaning on her cane. "That's the perfect spot," she said softly, pointing to the wall facing the morning sun. He always did love watching the sunrise. Alana's hands shook slightly as she lifted the frame. The nails were already in place, waiting. With gentle precision, she hung the photo, adjusting it until it sat perfectly level. Her brother's eyes seemed to twinkle with approval. Ruth shuffled closer, resting her head on Alana's shoulder. They stood in comfortable silence, remembering. Outside, the sounds of reconstruction continued. Hammers tapping, voices calling measurements, laughter floating through the unfinished windows. "The house is healing," Ruth murmured. "Just like our city." Alana wrapped an arm around her mother's shoulders, studying the photo of the brother whose death had set her on this path. The frame caught the light streaming through new windows, reflecting onto fresh walls that would soon hold more family photos, more memories, more hope. Through the bedroom door, they could see Keon explaining legal terms to a group of attentive seniors. The boy who'd almost been another victim was now helping build a better system. Down the street, children played freely, no longer watching for patrol cars. In the distance, church bells rang, their sound carrying clearly through air, no longer thick with fear. Sunday morning light streamed through the restored stained glass windows of Ruth's church, casting rainbow patterns across the packed pews. The usual crowd had swelled with visitors, journalists, activists, and families from across the city. Every seat was filled, and people stood along the walls, their faces expectant. At the front of the sanctuary, a newly installed wall drew every eye. Photographs covered its surface, faces of those lost to police violence over the decades. Some images were crisp and recent, others faded with age. Each bore a name and date, transforming statistics into stories, numbers into neighbors. Alana sat in the front pew beside Ruth, both dressed in their Sunday finest. Her mother's silver hair caught the light, and her hands rested steady on her familiar Bible. Behind them, Mrs. Johnson dabbed her eyes with a tissue as she recognized faces on the wall, children and grandchildren of friends, young lives cut short. Keon stood near the pulpit steps in a pressed suit, his intern badge replaced with a deacon's pin. His grandmother beamed from her usual spot in the choir stand. The nervous teenager from that dark corner was gone, replaced by a young man who stood tall, shoulders straight, with purpose. The choir's warm-up hymns faded as Pastor Marcus stepped to the microphone. "Today," he began, his deep voice filling the space, "we gather not just to worship, but to remember, to honor, and yes, to celebrate a new chapter in our city's story." Heads nodded throughout the congregation. In the back, Ethan Cho adjusted his recording equipment, capturing the moment for his radio show. Judge Inez sat quietly in a middle pew, her judicial reserve softened by the occasion. "We have with us," Pastor Marcus continued, "someone who reminds us that justice isn't just a word in Scripture. It's a calling that demands action." "Director Pierce?" Alana rose smoothly, though her heart thundered. She'd testified before Congress, briefed presidents, but speaking here, before her community, felt weightier. These were the people who'd raised her, who'd supported her mother after her brother's death, who'd helped rebuild their home. She took her place at the pulpit, surveying the sea of familiar faces. Seniors who'd manned phone banks sat beside young activists who'd marched. Officers who'd helped expose the grays were scattered throughout, their badges catching the light. "When I was 17, Alana began, her voice clear and strong, my brother's photo became one of the first on a wall like this. Another young black life reduced to a statistic. Another family left to grieve while those responsible faced no consequences. The church was silent, except for soft sounds of agreement, of shared pain. That loss shaped my life's direction. But standing here today, I see something different. I see a community that refused to accept darkness as permanent. I see elders who turned their wisdom into action, young people who chose courage over fear, and officers who remembered their true duty to serve and protect. She gestured to the wall of photos. Each face here represents not just a tragedy, but a call to action. When they tried to make me another name on this wall, you answered that call. You flooded phone lines, shared evidence, testified in court. You proved that justice isn't something we wait for. It's something we build together. The choir hummed softly, a foundation of harmony supporting her words. Keon straightened his tie, eyes bright with determination. Some say change comes slowly, Alana continued, that we must be patient, wait for the right moment, the right light. But I stand here today to say, we don't wait for the light, we become it. The choir's hum grew stronger. Heads nodded. Amens rippled through the congregation. We become it through our courage to speak truth, through our willingness to stand together, through our determination to build systems of accountability that serve all people, not just some. Camera flashes punctuated her words as photographers captured the moment. The morning light through the windows seemed to intensify, bathing the sanctuary in gold. The consent decree is just the beginning. The scholarships, the oversight board, the new training standards, these are tools. But the real power lies in this room, in our continued commitment to shine light into dark places. Ruth's eyes shone with pride as she watched her daughter, seeing echoes of past civil rights leaders in her stance, her conviction. Every time we choose justice over convenience, truth over comfort, community over division, we become the light this city needs. And that light, Alana's voice rose with emotion, that light cannot be dimmed. The choir surged to their feet, voices lifting in powerful harmony. Like a wave, the seniors in the congregation rose, followed by everyone else until the whole church stood together. Keon stepped forward at the pulpit steps, face glowing with hope for the future he would help build. Cameras flashed again, recording this moment of transformation. But the real power wasn't in the photos or headlines. It was in the unified heartbeat of a community standing firm in their commitment to justice. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.